18, Ghosts of Gettysburg. Hey y'all, I'm Heather, and this is Poison Appalachia, the dark side of Appalachia. As always, thank you all for listening. Did you like last week's episode, the Hatfields and McCoys? Yeah, they were pretty bananas. I was confused back and forth of all the people, so I tried to make it pretty straightforward, but I know it's kind of confusing. But this week we're going to do something a little different. I'm skirting around the whole Appalachia thing today. Gettysburg is technically not in Appalachia, but it's close. It's considered part of the Appalachian Mountains and the Appalachian Plateau, so I'm including it in this podcast because you know what? I made the rules here. So today it will be a Poison Appalachia-ish episode. And really, there's only about 4 or 5 counties in Pennsylvania that are not Appalachia, and it's in one of them, so we're going to say it's Appalachia. For some of my foreign listeners, if I have any, or for those of us who have been out of school for some time, let's cover a little bit of the history of Gettysburg and the Battle of Gettysburg. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania is the site of the Battle of Gettysburg, the bloodiest battle in the U.S. Civil War. Gettysburg is a borough in Pennsylvania and the county seat of Adams County, Pennsylvania, in the United States. As of the 2020 census, the borough had a population of 7,106 people. In 1760, Irishman Samuel Geddes settled at the Shippensburg, Baltimore, and Philadelphia-Pittsburgh crossroads in what was then western York County, and established a tavern frequented by soldiers and traders. In 1786, his son James purchased 116 acres of his land, divided it up into 220 lots, and sold them, and is thus considered the founder of Gettysburg. On January 22, 1800, the Pennsylvania legislature created Adams County, with Gettysburg as its county seat. The borough was incorporated in 1806. The confluence of 10 major roads of the period caused it to be attractive to travelers and settlers alike. In 1858, the Gettysburg Railroad completed the construction of a railroad line from Gettysburg to Hanover, and the Gettysburg Railroad Station opened a year later. The Battle of Gettysburg was fought on July 1st through July 3rd, 1863, in and around the town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, by Union and Confederate forces during the American Civil War. But why Gettysburg? This seems way north of any other battles. So I guess after his success at Chancellorsville in Virginia on May 1863, General Robert E. Lee led his army through the Shenandoah Valley to begin his second invasion of the North, the Gettysburg Campaign. With his army in high spirits, Lee intended to shift the focus of the summer campaign from war-ravaged northern Virginia and hoped to influence northern politicians to give up their prosecution of the war by penetrating as far as Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, or even Philadelphia. Right up through the Appalachian Mountains he went, prodded by Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln at the time. Major General Joseph Hooker moved in his army in pursuit, but was relieved of his command just 3 days before the battle and replaced by General Meade. Gettysburg was a pivotal clash between the Union and Confederate forces. General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia faced off against General George Meade's Army of the Potomac in a brutal 3-day conflict. Lee executed an orderly withdrawal and escaped across the Potomac River without being drawn into another battle, and Meade was heavily criticized by President Abraham Lincoln for his cautious pursuit of the failure to destroy Lee's retreating army. The battle ended with a decisive Union victory, halting Lee's invasion of the North and marking the beginning of the Confederacy's decline. However, victory came at an enormous cost. Lee led his army on a torturous retreat back to Virginia. Between 46,000 and 51,000 soldiers from both armies were casualties in the 3-day battle. It was the costliest in U.S. history. A 20-year-old woman, Jenny Wade, was the only civilian killed during the battle. She was hit by a stray bullet that passed through her kitchen door while she was making bread on July 3rd. So, side note here, if you'll remember the Johnstown flood, and then the Centralia episode 2, both of these happened on Memorial Day. So at least they changed up the holiday for this one. This one was a little closer to the 4th of July. Also, side note, I can't imagine a horrible war going on in your backyard while you just casually make bread. I would be hiding under my bed, not making bread. On November 19th, President Abraham Lincoln used the dedication ceremony for the Gettysburg National Cemetery to honor the fallen Union soldiers and redefine the purpose of the war in his historic Gettysburg Address. Physical damage can still be seen in some of the houses through the town, notably the Schmucker House located on Seminary Ridge. So many losses of life in such an awful way is bound to lead to restless spirits still wandering the grounds. For decades, stories of wandering spirits across the Gettysburg battlefield, local buildings, and nearby woods have captivated visitors and residents alike. People claim to hear phantom footsteps, ghostly drumbeats, and echoes of musket fire and cannon blast. Many believe these encounters are the restless souls of soldiers reliving their final moments of violence and fear. Today, Gettysburg's history blends folklore, first-hand accounts, and tragedy, solidifying its reputation of one of the most haunted places in the United States. From the History Channel website, it says, "Soldiers lay where they fell, and graves lined the once peaceful landscape. The devastation was overwhelming, turning Gettysburg into a grim scene of loss and suffering." One anonymous New Jersey soldier described the horrific scene. Burial parties were sent out, and those who could get away from their commands went out to view the scene of carnage, and surely it was a scene never to be forgotten. Upon the open fields, like sheaves bound by the reaper, in crevices of the rocks, behind fences, trees, and buildings, in thickets where they had crept for safety only to die in agony, by stream or wall or hedge, wherever the battle had raged, in their waking steps and could carry them, lay the dead. The emotional and physical scars left behind in Gettysburg weren't left only by those who survived. It's believed the sheer magnitude of suffering and death has left an imprint on the town that lingers to this day. Unfortunately, the Civil War wasn't the first battle to occur there, and maybe not the worst. Years before the Battle of Gettysburg, another battle, one of even bigger, may have occurred about a mile from Big Round Top at the southern peak of the battlefield. It says maps show that two Native American tribes and territories delineating through Adams County suggested it could have been a turf war between them. Emmanuel Bushman, a writer from Gettysburg, wrote in 1887 about many unnatural and supernatural sights and sounds experienced in the area of Round Top that he called the Indian Fields. One of the most famous battlefield locations of Gettysburg is Devil's Den. It's a boulder-strewn hill rock formation located at the southmost edge of Houck's Ridge, about 500 yards west of the hill known as Little Round Top. Used extensively as a firing position by artillery and sharpshooters on the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg, it was the scene of some of the bloodiest fighting of the war and is an important stop on battlefield tours of the area. Some early local accounts suggest the site was formerly a Native American hunting ground and was alleged to have been the site of a bloody First Nation incident called the Battle of the Crows. It's well known that the name Devil's Den was already in use long before the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. Legend has it that local residents once believed that crevices between the boulders there were home to an enormous snake. The snake was supposedly nicknamed the Devil, resulting in the entire area being dubbed Devil's Den. Despite the eccentricities of local legend, the true origin of the name is uncertain. The only thing I could find about the Battle of the Crows was in Greene County, Pennsylvania, which is 4 hours away from Gettysburg, so I don't think that was it. I'm not really sure about the Battle of the Crows, but according to a couple different pages, the Battle of the Crows is more violent and larger than the Battle of Gettysburg. If that was true, then there's definitely bound to be bad juju in that area even before the Battle of Gettysburg. The Devil's Den is a rock formation, elevated cropping of large, haphazard boulders. It was perfect for the Confederate sniper's nest. For much of the battle was the site of this particularly vicious fighting. On July 2nd, 1863, the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg, the area around Devil's Den was the site of intense fighting when General Longstreet's Confederate corps attacked the divisions of General Sickles' 3rd Corps of the Army of the Potomac. Initial ghost sightings began in the area shortly after the battle and have been a regular occurrence ever since, including soldiers that have been spotted among the rocks by many visitors, and witnesses have heard sounds like a battle going on. Devil's Den is a major attraction of both tourists and ghost hunters alike, many of whom often bring cameras and recording devices in an attempt to capture some of its ghostly charm. However, such equipment is reported to malfunction or completely shut down. Visitors will often experience their cameras or cell phones glitching when they try to take a picture. The same is said for paranormal investigators when attempting to conduct research. Their equipment will simply cease to function. Several photographers have reportedly captured fleeting images of one ghost soldier, an unkempt, long-haired figure, shoeless and ragged clothing, wearing a floppy-brimmed hat. In some cases, it's been rumored that the spirit actually spoke aloud to a witness before suddenly vanishing without a trace. There are also reports of a ghostly cavalryman on horseback who appears in the area to only vanish soon after, as well as numerous reports of phantom sounds, gunfire, shouting voices, and cries of anguish, all completely unexplained. Dozens of photographs exist today in private collections that are alleged to be evidence of supernatural activity in the area. Throughout the years, a shoeless entity has been known to approach tourists and give helpful advice as to where they need to go. Thought to be the spirit of Confederate Texas soldier, the ghost has been captured in photographs going back as far as the 1970s. He even showed up in pictures that didn't detect him when initially snapped. Next is Little Round Top. Little Round Top was a critical location during the Battle of Gettysburg. If the Confederate Army had been able to capture it, they would have had a strategic advantage over the Union forces. The fighting on Little Round Top was fierce, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Ultimately, the Union forces were able to hold their ground and secure the hill, but at a great cost. There are numerous stories of hauntings at Round Top. A group of reenactors were relaxing on a Little Round Top close to sunset when they heard rustling in the trees. They said that a rather haggard old man in a Union uniform came out from the trees. He reeked of sulfur, which is one of the main ingredients of black gunpowder, and black powder guns during the American Civil War. He proceeded to give the startled group of reenactors a handful of musket rounds. They assumed the man was part of the production, but later found out that the musket rounds that were handed to him were actually real rounds, not props. No one on the set knew who the man was, and no one saw him again. Visitors report experiencing strange and unexplained phenomena. Some claims to have seen the ghosts of soldiers walking on the battlefield, while others have heard the sounds of battle and the cries of the wounded. There have also been reports of orbs of light and other unexplained phenomena. One of the most famous ghost stories associated with Little Round Top involves the ghost of a Union soldier named Gideon. According to legend, Gideon was a drummer boy who was killed in a battle. Visitors to Little Round Top have reported hearing the sound of drumming coming from the area where Gideon is said to have died. Some have even claimed to have seen the ghostly figure of a young boy playing a drum. Another popular ghost story associated with Little Round Top involves the ghost of a Confederate soldier named William. According to legend, William was shot and killed while attempting to scale the hill during the battle. Visitors to the area have reportedly seen the ghostly figure of a soldier dressed in Confederate garb. Some have even claimed to have felt a cold breeze and heard the sound of a musket being fired. Other strange occurrences at Little Round Top include the persistent smell of black powder, fluttering orbs, screams, and strange footsteps. Some visitors have even felt taps on their shoulder and tugs on their clothing. So next is Hospital Woods. Hospital Woods served as one of the battle's primitive temporary field hospitals. Protected by the deep woods from which its site takes its name, a ghostly nurse has been seen in the dark of night, glowing in an eerie light. This is appropriate as the field nurses were the only ray of light in the nightmare darkness that was Battle of Gettysburg. Other souls that are said to have frequented the Hospital Woods and a house that is built there are said to kick doors, turning lights on and off, activating electronics, and moving heavy furniture. These are the activities of a poltergeist, a spirit that manifests by moving objects but rarely, if ever, seen as an apparition. But the Civil War did not create all the ghosts from Gettysburg. Also frequently seen in the Hospital Woods area is the specter of a woman from a neighborhood who committed suicide years ago. Triangular Field. Triangular Field, located northwest of Devil's Den, is also notorious for ghostly activity. Visitors report shadowy figures crossing the field, feelings of being touched, and an unsettling presence around them. Similar phenomena has been reported at Little Round Top, where Colonel Joshua Chamberlain's 20th Maine Regiment secured a crucial Union victory. Many claim to see soldiers in uniform, hear musket fire, or encounter figures from the past who vanish without trace. At Triangular Field, apparitions of Confederate sharpshooters have been sighted in the rocks down near the bottom of the field itself. Disembodied rebel yells have echoed out through the plains, and visitors report seeing impressions of bodies on the grass, crawling in specific directions as if they're following some advancement orders. Cannons and screaming are reported throughout the entire Gettysburg battlefield, especially at Triangular Field. The sounds of moaning and dying soldiers are still heard even today, their energies echoing on. Union soldiers have been spotted in the field's left gate entrance, and many visitors report being approached by men dressed in Civil War garb. Peach Orchard. This is a pretty haunted place, it said. On July 2nd, this battle occurred. The fight was hard and fierce. It was a bloody battle with a lot of deaths. One New Hampshire regiment, within 3 hours, lost 350 men and all of their officers but 2, which that's just devastating. I can't imagine. On July 2nd, the fighting here was fierce. So many horses were killed that the Union soldiers had to pull the cannons on the battlefield. The Confederacy held their positions in this battle. A lot of spirits here. People have reported hearing voices, hear sounds of battle. They've seen orbs and shapes of soldiers. I couldn't find a ton about the spirits, but there was a major battle here at Gettysburg, so it stands to reason there would be a lot of paranormal activity. The wheat field. The second day of the Battle of Gettysburg was the bloodiest day of the battle. Throughout that day, fighting at numerous locations around the battlefield involved 100,000 combatants, 20,000 of whom would end the day either killed, wounded, or captured, or missing, making July 2nd, 1863, a truly dire day in the history of our nation. And centered amidst the near constant ebb and flow of the ongoing carnage was a small patch of land, 19 acres of wheat, owned by local farmer George Rose, that historically became known as the wheat field. The once chaotic and blood-soaked wheat field fell into an eerie calm for the remainder of the battle. However, the toll it took on soldiers who fiercely battled for its possession was devastating. The Confederates engaged 6 brigades, while the Federal forces fielded 13 somewhat smaller brigades. When I typed this out, I was like, don't say bridges, say brigades. And what I do, first thing I say is bridges. But out of the 20,444 men involved in the conflict, approximately 30% suffered casualties. Some wounded soldiers managed to crawl to Plum Run, but when unable to cross it, staining the river with their blood. People visiting here have heard sounds of battle, seen apparitions of soldiers, smelled the sulfur from the battlefield. It's a very haunted spot. So that's about all of the haunted battlefield sites I could find there, but there are plenty more ghostly encounters around the Gettysburg area. Next is the Sachs Bridge. The Sachs-covered bridge on Waterworks Road is reputed to be one of the most haunted spots in all of Gettysburg. When the Battle of Gettysburg broke out in July of 1863, the town of Gettysburg was turned upside down by the brutality that permeated the land. Since a vast majority of Union and Confederate soldiers were young men, there were instances that saw some of them attempt to abandon their posts and go into hiding. One such occasion involved 3 Confederate troops who tried to evade the war by donning Union attire. Marching with the North near Sachs-covered bridge, they were soon discovered as belonging to the South and were promptly made an example. It's argued as to whether they were spies, deserters, or outright traitors. Regardless, the young men were hanged from the bridge's wooden support beams, ensuring that any Confederate passing there would see the executed men, thereby serving as a warning. The wandering spirits of the 3 hanged Confederate soldiers are believed to haunt the vicinity of the picturesque bridge at various times of the day and night, and reported paranormal experiences on the bridge include the spectral smell of phantom cigar smoke, the sound of ghostly cannons fired in the distance, and the sensation of suddenly feeling a tap on the shoulder, only to turn around to find no one is there. Next is Jenny Wade House, which I mentioned her earlier. Almost every old building in Gettysburg has its own haunted story, but a few places stand out, including the Jenny Wade House. Jenny Wade 20 was the only civilian killed during the battle after being struck by a stray bullet while baking bread in her sister's kitchen. Her death was an unfortunate accident, but has left a lasting mark on the house. Visitors and staff report doors that open and close on their own. Disembodied voices and the feeling of being watched. Some believe Jenny's spirit still lingers, trapped in the place where she met her ultimate end. Her untimely end. Gettysburg College, known as the Pennsylvania College at the time of the 1863 battle, the campus was located in the midst of the fighting. Its structures providing shelter for the wounded and dying. Its main building, Pennsylvania Hall, constructed in 1837 and nicknamed Old Dorm, it served as a Confederate field hospital during the battle. Since then, there's been much paranormal activity at what some call the Haunted College. Students and staff members of the college report seeing ghostly figures of soldiers pacing back and forth in the cupola of the building, and the shadowy figure of a Confederate sentry has been spotted in the tower, sometimes gesturing wildly to watchers below. 2 college administrators left the building one night, reported that the elevators opened into the grisly scene of a Civil War-era operating room, packed with wounded and dying soldiers, yet completely eerily silent. When the elevator door closed and reopened, the scene vanished. Yeah, if I came across that, I would probably not go back to that college, ever. Next is the Lady in White. The Lady in White is another famous Gettysburg specter, known for her ethereal presence and sorrowful demeanor. Legend has it that the Lady in White roams the battlefield in the historic town, her figure draped in a flowing white dress that seems to glow in the moonlight. Witnesses describe her as appearing lost and forlorn, her face etched with sadness. Some believe she's a ghost of a woman who lost her beloved during the Civil War, forever searching for him among the countless graves and battle sites. She seems to travel a lot through the area, though. She's been sighted numerous places. She's said to roam the battlefield in town in a flowing white dress that glows in the moonlight. She's described as lost and forlorn, searching for her beloved among the graves and battle sites, or she's said to float and bend down, searching for someone at Spangler's Meadow, where hundreds of Union soldiers died in 1863. Some speculate she's a nun who tended to the wounded after the battle. The Lady in White is said to wander around among the tombstones, her ghostly figure glowing in the moonlight. The Lady in White is said to haunt Glatfelter Hall, where she is said to have lost her love in the war and jumped to her death from the bell tower. Some say she lures male students to meet her gaze and share her fate. Now, I don't know if these are all the same Lady in White, or if there are more than one ghost named Lady in the White in the area. I couldn't really tell if that was just one person, one spirit, or several. Next is the Children's Orphanage. Originally, it was a private home during the famous battle. It was converted to a makeshift hospital for the wounded soldiers. Its cellar filled with the bodies of the dead and dying. After the Battle of Gettysburg, it was converted to the National Soldiers' Orphanage Homestead, an orphanage to house the children who'd lost their parents in the battle. After Rosa Carmichael assumed the position of headmistress, it's rumored that Carmichael tortured and chained orphan children in the dungeon she secretly created in the cellar. Side note, why are there always so mean and cruel people, especially to orphans? Like, they've lost their parents, their family, their home, everything they've ever known, and they go in somewhere where they're tortured. It's just not fair. It's awful. I mean, you hear this time and time again. It's just ridiculous. I don't get it. But Rosa Carmichael was the worst. It's said that she ruled the orphanage with an iron fist, showing little compassion or empathy for the children's plight. Reports of her mistreatment began to circulate among the local community, raising concerns about the safety and well-being of the children. The Gettysburg Orphanage was, sorry, I lost my place. The Gettysburg Orphanage was eventually forced to close its doors. Rosa Carmichael's fate seems shrouded in mystery, with some accounts suggesting that she fled town to escape justice. I'd like to think that karma came back and did his handiwork on her. But I guess we'll never know. But EVP, electronic voice phenomena recordings, have been revealed, and the sounds of children's laughter, whispers, and even pleas for help, despite the orphanage being long abandoned. One ghost hunting expedition is said to have resulted in the capture of an image that showed the ghostly outline of a woman believed to be Rosa Carmichael herself. Hopefully she's there being tortured by the children this time. Next is the Farnsworth Inn. It was built somewhere around 1810. The Farnsworth House Inn today is a local tourist attraction that operates as both an inn and a tourist shop. Located in Gettysburg, it's believed to be extremely haunted due to its connections with the battle and everything that took place in the 1860s. The Farnsworth House Inn was occupied by Confederate forces who utilized the structure as a makeshift hospital and headquarters, a practice that was common during the war. Many of the surrounding homes and buildings would often become centers for planning attacks and treating the wounded. And just a side note here, can you imagine you're just living your life in a small town and then suddenly this big, huge battle goes on and they come into your house and use it for whatever they want to? They have dead people there, live people, sick people. I just can't imagine. It just blows my mind. But during the third day of the Battle of Gettysburg, Union soldiers stormed the Farnsworth Inn, killing many Confederate snipers who were posted within. Those snipers had been stationed there to utilize the towering structure as an attempt to pick off Union soldiers as they crossed the bridge near Cemetery Hill. It's believed that some of the house is presently haunted by no less than 16 distinct spirits, including that of an 8-year-old boy, several Civil War soldiers, and a former midwife. Sounds of disembodied breathing, grunts, voices, and the musical strains of a jaw harp, along with the strong scent of cigars, has been experienced by guests who visit the home. Throughout the years, multiple photographs of a spiritual manifestation have been taken through the window of the exterior guest room seen from the street below. George House. Yeah, the guy's name is George, I guess. But it's also known as the Reynolds Death House. This building was owned by Gettysburg local George at the time of the battle, and it served as a temporary resting place for the famous U.S. Union Major General John F. Reynolds. Mortally wounded on the morning of the first day of the battle, Reynolds' body was brought back to this building, where legend has it his blood seeped into the floorboards, stains that are said to spiritually reappear upon occasion. The house is believed to be actively haunted by at least 4 different ghosts, including the general, his fiancée Catherine Hewitt, the spirit of a teenage boy, and a petulant, mischievous 4th ghost, only known as the Liar. On one website, it says this: the popular Pennsylvania Major General John Reynolds was killed at the outbreak of the battle. When his body was brought to the house to be prepared for transport to his home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a local widow volunteered to sit vigil overnight. Why does she still sit vigil here so many years later? Which, I don't understand that because she's not one of the ghosts that was listed, but whatever. I guess each place has different stories. So let's see. During the battlefield, the house was positioned between Cemetery Ridge, the stronghold of the Union Army of the Potomac, and Lutheran Seminary. When General Lee's Confederate forces had amassed, this particular building sat along what was referred to as no man's land during the time of the battle, as the streets ran red with blood. Like, I know that's probably just poetic license, but can you imagine? Can you imagine how bloody that place was? Ugh. Next is the haunted creek bed, Winebrenner Run. It's home to some of the best paranormal activity in the town of Gettysburg itself. The Confederate military line along the stream was starting point for the Battle of East Cemetery Hill on the Battle of Gettysburg's second day. Many a Union soldier perished along the banks of the creek bed, filling its cool waters soothing during the hot July sun. Most of the streams on this battlefield empty into this run. Heavy rains after the battle washed the carnage of the war into the center of town. It's no surprise that so many strange photos and sightings have happened along this bloody run. Next is the Hoffman Mansion. The Hoffman Mansion, once Hoffman Farm, was a 123-acre dairy farm owned by the Hoffman family. Like other homes in the Gettysburg area, the Hoffman Mansion was reportedly used as a field hospital for Union troops during and after Pickett's. Many wounded soldiers brought to such makeshift field hospitals perished, and some believe their spirits still linger there. It's also said that some of the Hoffman daughters supposedly hung herself inside the home in response to a beau's infidelity. Some say that her spirit still haunts the upstairs attic. Photographers routinely capture images of orbs and other phenomena inside the house. It's also believed that the doctors in charge of the Hoffman Field Hospital still haunts the site. A shadowy black figure is rumored to appear in the corners of the home, often as an omen of bad luck. Doors open and close of their own volition throughout the building, and disembodied voices, strange sounds, and actual physical contact with entities have been reported. During battle, many of the soldiers that were brought to these so-called field hospitals ended up perishing inside them. That means that these private homes saw numerous deaths, and they're now probably full of numerous spirits. The Old Grove. The Grove is a few hundred yards from the base of East Cemetery Hill. The area was defended by the 25th and 75th Ohio Regiments. Woohoo, Ohio! But unfortunately with great casualties. Their attackers on the AM and PM of July 2nd were the infamous LA Tigers. 600 strong were mostly recruited New Orleans prison inmates. They were decimated by the Ohioans, and the mass graves in this area were mostly unmarked. A road was laid through the grove in 1963. The remains of several soldiers were unearthed in the process. There's a great old elm that witnessed it all and that still remains till this day standing. The grove is considered by many investigators, empaths, etc., to be one of the most active areas of the battlefield. A road that was laid through the grove in 1963 accidentally unearthed the remains of several soldiers. There have been sightings here of ghosts of a young girl believed to be the disturbed victim of post-battle mental stress who committed suicide not long after the battle ended. With a large record of photo evidence depicting orbs, mists, and other odd phenomena, the grove is considered by some to be the most active areas for ghost sightings in Gettysburg. So that's pretty much. I'll skip this part. I messed this up. Something interesting I was reading is what's called the stone tape theory, which suggests the energy released at the moment of death becomes trapped in the area's abundant granite and quartz. There's definitely a lot in that area. Kind of interesting theory. Not sure I believe in it, but I thought it was kind of a neat theory to share. I just think that a place that has seen so much trauma and death has to hold some of it there. Maybe not even what we think of as ghosts, but as some sort of energy that creates something supernatural. There's so much more that I haven't covered. A lot of private homes are said to be haunted. There are a number of once private residences scattered across the battlefield where supernatural activity is alleged to have occurred over the past 160 years. Many of these homes are now the property of the National Park Service, and most were used during the battle as makeshift field hospitals and shelters for the wounded. Some say they continue to host visitations by the ghosts of Gettysburg. Also, numerous battle sites and cemeteries, hospital groves, and fields probably exist, or do exist. What I cover is just the tip of the iceberg. After all, Gettysburg is one of the most haunted places in the U.S. The cool part about Gettysburg, or at least cool to this nerd here, even though I've never been, is that it's a historical site and it has so many options for touring it. But also, they do lean into the haunting aspect, and you can do a lot of ghost tours there too if you're not interested into the history of it. But who wouldn't be interested in the history, right? While you're in Gettysburg, there are a lot of places, a lot of state parks and forests in the area for those outdoorsy types. And there are a lot of places to shop, eat, and stay. It looks like there are a lot of things to do for kids, too. If you bring your kids, the most interesting thing that I found was a place called Mr. Ed's Elephant Museum and Candy Emporium. I mean, who wouldn't want to check that out? But it's not real elephants, just statues. But it still would be kind of cool to see. So have you ever been to Gettysburg? Did you experience anything there? Do you believe it's haunted? I asked people on my page, and a couple of people said that they felt something when they were there. A couple of people said they didn't. So I don't know. Maybe you just have to be sensitive to that thing, or maybe just have a good imagination. I don't know. Either way, though, I feel like it's an important place to visit. Even if it isn't haunted, many of our soldiers lost their lives there, and it should be a place that is remembered. As President Abraham Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, "The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here." So that's it for today's episode. As always, thank you for listening. You can find me under socials, under Poison Appalachia. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and now Blue Sky. I also have a website, too. Check it out at poisonappalachia.com. Also, I'm selling some merchandise through Zazzle to see if I can make a little bit of money. Not much, believe me. I don't get much from it. But if you want to support me, get a cool shirt or coffee mug or something like that. Makes a great Christmas gift. Hey, I have an episode about Georgia next week. This will be my first one in Georgia, so that's kind of exciting. Hopefully I'll find some about Alabama and Mississippi too, but I'm just happy to find something in Georgia. So thank you all. Hope you all have a great week. Bye, y'all.